And since the last two episodes of the show, we've kind of been talking about the state of the Masters of the Universe toy line and it moving over to Super7. And on the last episode, we had that news from the Horsemen saying that they had just sent prototypes off, and I speculated that we might see something at New York Comic Con, and guess what? We saw something at New York Comic Con. Yep, it was pretty awesome.
You were right. You always are.
I'm always right. I won't go too far into detail on a lot of this because I did a separate video the day it was revealed because I wanted to talk about it. But essentially what they had on display were 5 new prototypes for what they're calling Ultimate Edition figures, where they showed off He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Ram Man, and Faker. They're all reissues from the Classics line, but they're coming with a ton of accessories. And in a lot of cases, these accessories have already been released in the past, but were like kind of scattered around as like bonus accessories with other figures. So in the past, it was almost like a reward for buying every figure. You got all these little extra things. Like, for instance, you would get the version of He-Man's Power Sword the way it looked in the original mini-comics, as opposed to the way it looked in the old cartoon or the old toy line. Because, believe it or not, those Power Swords all look different from each other. Yeah. And there's a lot of fans out there that like the different artistic representations, and so like Mattel was always really good about giving us all these different versions. Well, now with Super7, they're releasing these new Ultimate Editions where they're basically just including all of this stuff with each of these figures, so when you buy these, you can just create what you would consider the perfect He-Man or the perfect Skeletor. But they're even throwing in a few new things there too. So like Faker's, for the first time, got a new head that looks like the vintage toy head, which is kind of cool. Yeah, we didn't have that with Faker before. So, you know, there's throwing in all these little extra things, and pretty cool. I explained it all in detail in my video, so if you guys want more info, I would suggest checking that out, because I rambled on about it forever, because I'm a huge He-Man geek. But the one thing I haven't talked about yet that I really wanted to bring up today, because this is something else we had speculated about before, one of the other things that Super7 announced, in addition to those 5 figures they showed, plus they said that we're getting 8 new Filmation figures in addition to that, and another 8 figures in the Classics line, which I think includes those 5 they showed. So that's 16 figures total that they're working on right now. But the other big news is that they also said that they've sent off the Snake Mountain playset to the factory for pricing. Essentially what that means is they're trying to get it costed to figure out what it'll cost them to manufacture it and what they would have to charge us for it to see if it's something that they can produce. This is actually very good news because Mattel showed the prototype off for Snake Mountain 2 San Diego Comic-Cons ago now, but then there was the whole news about the line getting canceled, and Snake Mountain was just basically done. There was no chance of it. Yeah. So we didn't think that we were ever going to see this playset, and even when I interviewed Brian back at San Diego at Super7, he was kind of saying, you know, it's probably going to be very expensive. I don't know if that's something we can do. So the fact that they're checking now to find out if it's something that they can offer at a reasonable price is pretty awesome news.
Yeah.
I think it just shows that the line is being handed to a group of guys who really care about this property. They're obviously passionate about it. They obviously want to make this stuff. So I really do feel like since Mattel has decided they're done with it, they're handing it off to pretty capable hands, it seems like. That's, I mean, it's all looking very positive right now, and personally, I'm pretty excited to see where it's all going. So.
Yeah, and from an outsider perspective, it sounds like really neat directions they're kind of taking that stuff.
Yeah.
And the way you were explaining to me with those, like you've said in the past, when you got a new company doing this stuff, so you have to come out and you have to do some of the flagship characters. So it would be really easy for them to go, okay, well, here's a He-Man. You know, you've got 100 He-Mans, and this one's pretty much the same.
Right.
Just to kind of get the thing off the ground. But instead, they've said, okay, well, we know we got to do this from a business standpoint, but here's an inventive way to do it to where people still get value out of it. You know, there's a little something in there for just about everybody.
I agree.
There's an actual reason to buy it, you know, and to have that, and then to run forward with it. So I think that's a really, and I would feels to me like that's kind of a real, hand to the fans too, to say, sort of a, hey, we want to do something well for you. We want to do the best we can. So
I really
here's the neatest way we can do this.
I see a lot of positives with those re-releases too, because I know you can look at it one way and say, I've been buying this toy line for years. I've got these guys already. I spent all this time collecting all these Bones accessories. and now Super7's releasing these Ultimate Editions with everything, and that's not fair. I mean, you can kind of look at it that way, I guess, but I think the positives with this greatly outweigh that line of thinking. I talked about in the past, like you just said, that I felt like with a new company taking over, it would make sense to have some of these flagship characters out there and available to purchase again. And this is a great chance also to bring on board some new people who want to buy He-Man figures who maybe haven't because they haven't been able to buy some of these core characters that have been sold out for a long time. One of the biggest complaints that I always hear, I hear this in person all the time whenever I'm at a convention. People come up to me at every show I'm at least one person comes up to me and says, I really love your reviews on Masters of the Universe Classics. That's a very cool toy line, but I can't collect it because I haven't been able to buy He-Man, or I haven't been able to buy Teela, or I haven't been able to buy whatever main character that they feel like is integral for the line to warrant them collecting it. So I just think it's a good idea to put out these main characters that people would want to buy, and just even if they can just keep them there, I think that's great. They're kind of like evergreen characters, you know? It's like in a retail situation, when you walk into a store and you look at the shelf full of Ninja Turtles figures, you're always able to find Leo, Mikey, Raph, and Donnie. Because retail warrants that they have to have those main characters on the shelf, because kids are going to want to buy the main Turtles. The same with Star Wars. Every wave that comes out, you know, us collectors are always excited to see the new characters, and then there's always a Kylo Ren thrown in there, or a Darth Vader thrown in there. Well, that's because they got to keep these main characters on the shelf, even if the collectors already have them. And I think, in a sense, even though this is a collector-driven line, it's still smart to have He-Man and Skeletor out there. Yeah. So,
well, and it's a collector-driven line that's been going for what, a decade?
Almost a decade.
You know, so if there, it's even more important in something that comes out in waves like that, because, like you were saying, if people can't get the main characters or just a standard version of the main characters, they come into the line 2 years late, and then there's no chance they're ever going to get it. Right. Then they're not going to look into that line.
Teela is the best example. I mean, Super7's releasing this Ultimate Edition of Teela. Teela has not had a figure since the first year of this toy line.
That's crazy.
Right? She's had, like, variants, like Battleground Teela came out, where she was, like, based on the DC Comics version, where she was, like, wearing, like, the gold bikini and had blonde hair. But it's not, like, the standard red-haired, like, Teela that everybody knows.
Yeah.
That version of Teela has not had a re-release since the first year, and now she's finally coming back out. So many fans that have collected this line missed that figure and never got a chance to buy her again. And Super7 is now putting her back out there.
Yeah,
so
I think that's great.
That's wonderful.
You know, I have trouble looking at, you know, well, I had to buy all this stuff separately and now it's all in one package, as much of a downside, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if you're collecting it so you're the only one who will have this stuff, then you're probably collecting it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You know? If you want the line to exist and keep giving you new cool stuff, you have to give people access to it. And I know it is a collector's line, and there's a market out there for, you know, sometimes the hunt is part of the fun, and I can see how this would stagger some of that, you know. But, you know, you went out, you found all your stuff, you got it, you were still happy about it then, you can still be happy about it now. But to me, it just seems like toys aren't something that you should try to hoard down to the point where only a few people can have it, you know. If there's stuff people want, then make more of it, you know.
Right, exactly. That's the same way that I feel about it too. So I'm all in. You know, I've always been a big believer in it's more important to keep the brand alive than anything else. And if this is just a good way to keep the brand alive, so that we can get more new figures of characters we don't have, then this is what we got to do. Yep, and I think that's just the right way.
I don't see a downside to it at all.
No,
it seems like all good news to me.
Yeah, and, you know, like I said, they announced all those other figures in addition. They didn't reveal any of them yet because they said they weren't ready to reveal them yet. But the fact that they told us a number of figures that they're producing outside of these Ultimates, it's pretty good news, I think.
For sure.
So we're getting more figures, and that's awesome, and I think that should make us all pretty happy and a lot more optimistic than we were at this time back in July, I'd say. So, yeah, I think it's moving pretty well on the Masters front.